Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Well, CES Day 2 is well underway, and with that in mind, let's go to Bloomberg Tech co-hosts Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow, who are on the ground in Las Vegas with Palmer Luckey. He is the founder of Anduril. Over to you guys.
Katie, thank you very much indeed. And we are on the floor of CES, but we've got some serious conversations to have, not just about retro technology that is being brought back by Palmer Luckey and one of his startups, but we also want to talk about Anduril, because very much defense tech is in the eye of the storm right now. We have two Truth Social posts coming out from the president talking about the publicly traded defense companies shouldn't be doing stock buybacks, shouldn't be paying dividends, and need to focus on investing in America. Where do you think that is being pointed at, and why do you think it's being announced now?
Well, you can probably guess where I fall on this issue. President Trump is saying that he wants to see defense companies building new plants, building new factories, delivering on time, and then maintaining systems cost effectively. And that's, trying to do more of that is why I started Anduril 8 years ago. Because I looked at the United States defense industrial base and realized we weren't moving fast enough. We weren't building new plants. We weren't building the new technologies that we needed. And so I'd say I'm broadly aligned. Personally speaking, I think dividends and buybacks are actually very, very different in their tenor. And I think probably I'm much more on the sides of not allowing these companies to do dividends, certainly not when they're years behind on critical programs where they are failing to invest in new things. Stock buybacks are a little different because you're investing in yourself. You're basically saying, I believe that my future is better than my past. That's different than a dividend, which effectively ends up just being a tax on taxpayers to pay for defense straight into the pockets of public market investors. So I look at these little things a little differently. Big picture, if these companies were doing really well, and if they were living up to their end of the bargain, I don't think you would see any action from Trump or others on this. It's really a reflection of how many problems we have with our defense industrial base.
These are your competitors, right, Palmer? You compete against them for contracts, same pot of money.
That's right.
And, to be fair, in the time that you and I have been doing interviews, you are typically transparent. One of the provisions that the president proposes is a salary cap of $5 million.
Yep.
In the Bloomberg story, it outlined some of the comp of those CEOs. Right. Would you be willing to say what you pay yourself at Anduril, and if you would abide by
I pay myself $100,000 a year. So
significantly less than a $5 million cap.
True, but I also own a lot of my company. And this measure is not really written in a way where it's intended to hit new companies, starting new things. Act like if Kelly Johnson were alive today and he owned a bunch of Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or Raytheon, I don't think that anyone would have nearly much of a problem with him. But yeah, I pay myself $100,000 a year. That's my compensation package. I own a bunch of Anduril because I started the company. So my motivation is to try and build it the biggest thing possible. I will say, people have fairly critiqued and said, but Palmer, are you really a neutral party here? Are you really in a position to comment, given you're competing with these companies? And I'd say two things. One, these measures do apply in equal measure to me. I now cannot pay dividends. I now cannot do stock buybacks if I'm not investing in new plants, if I'm not doing these two things. The other thing is, it's always tricky when you want to. I'm in defense because I wanted to help solve these problems, right? It's actually the same thing with like mod retro in the gaming space. Like, of course Palmer would criticize these other game companies. After all, he's in the gaming space. It's like, but I'm in the gaming space because I want to solve these problems. It's kind of this like catch-22. Like if you're outside of it, they'll say, well, why don't you do something about it then? And you do something like, who cares what you're doing? You're just part of the problem. It's always been emotionally difficult for me.
We also have posts that President Trump is thinking, look, more than $1 trillion should be invested in the area of defense.
The budget should grow.
He's not anti-defense or anti-defense company. That's not for sure. That's for sure.
What's interesting is your company is, dare I say it, considering going public.
Yes.
Would your CEO, do you think the CEO that leads the business when it's gone public should be under these sorts of restrictions from an executive order? Do you think that that's going to be an issue?
I think that when you are on the dole and when you're effectively run on the public's wallet, that the public should be able to impose whatever restrictions they want on you. And you're not asking whether it should be, if I am getting paid by taxpayers, they should have the ability to elect people, elect representatives, elect, who will then nominate people, who can hold me to account in any way they wish. If they want to say that I only pay myself $5 million until I'm caught up with my schedules, they should be allowed to do that. If they say that I'm not allowed to pay myself $1 until I get caught up, I think they should be allowed to do that. When you are working on taxpayer dime, there is no level of oversight or intervention that I am against conceptually. Now, I think some of these might be bad moves. They might not necessarily help the defense base, but in concept, I think everything should be on the table. And I think it's even good maybe to scare some people sometimes. You don't necessarily go to people and say, this is the way it's going to be forever. You say, this is how it's going to be until you get your act together. You remember being a teenager and your parents say, you're grounded until X, Y, and Z. Bring up your grades, solve your problems, and then we will talk about altering the deal. You say, but this deal has so many problems. If it's like this my whole life, if I'm grounded for the rest of my life, that means I'll have no social life. And your parents are not necessarily looking to ground you for life. They're saying, right now, you're grounded. And I think that that's what you're seeing right now. It's not necessarily a lifetime
Palmer, let me jump in here. I want to bring the Bloomberg television audience the reporting, because these are two Truth Social posts by the president.
That's right.
They're proposals, but what Bloomberg's reporting in the last hour is that he is considering an EO, according to sources, to make this happen. Answer this. Is Anduril on track with the pledges and commitments it's made in Ohio, the projects that it is contractually obliged the military on, not just in this country, but around the world?
There are a handful of things where we are not, but in most cases we are. So like you brought up Ohio, we're building this huge plant, Arsenal 1 in Columbus, Ohio, where we're building autonomous fighter jets and a bunch of other things, building about 6 million square feet there. We're actually ahead of schedule on that. We had a bunch of people from Ohio that we hired, the first round of factory workers. We brought them out to California on our dime, so we were housing them, we're paying them, and we brought them so that we could put them into our existing factory, teach them how Anduril works, indoctrinate them into our way of manufacturing, our way of thinking, and we've actually already finished that training process, and we've already sent them back to Ohio where they're helping stand up the factory. We're going into production this summer, and we have a new batch of people that have already been sent back. So on Arsenal 1, we are ahead of schedule. We are hitting our commitments. I think that we're building a new plant to build new things, and we're doing it on our own dime. We're spending $900 million of our own money to build this plant.
Where aren't you? You were very transparent. Some places you're not. Are the weapons working as you want them to? Are they performing in the field?
So some of these things I can talk about, some that I can't talk about. But for example, I have a project that is a man-portable counter-UAS system. And it's
or Anduril?
Oh, Anduril. Sorry. I am Anduril in my perspective. Sorry about that. Anduril has a project building a man-portable counter-UAS system. We really wanted to have that actually fielded right about now, and instead, because of a variety of reasons, look, we're developing basically a thing that goes on a person and it shoots down drones that are trying to attack you. It's turned out to be a more technically challenging problem than we thought. Now, in that case, it's not a failure of, we're not building a factory or we don't want to invest. It's a harder technical problem than we thought. I suspect that we're going to continue to run into those. If you only build things with no technical risk, you're not trying hard enough. I think Anduril will continue to do things that from time to time will turn out to be harder than we thought. But, I just need to flip more heads than tails. Please.
When we're thinking about where you stand, where US stands versus China. Where does it in terms of drone technology? We're in this context of a geopolitical strain that started this year off with Venezuela. We look now to Russia. How do you see China and the Taiwan question?
China has an incredibly strong drone industry. It is largely a result of state intervention. It's largely a result of industrial policy, of supply chain investments that the government has made, and even trade deals that China has made around the world to allow for these drones to freely flow out into other marketplaces. China has the best drone industry in the world. It's not even close. It's definitely a weakness that the United States has. Now, you saw recently this ban on DJI drones.
Yes.
The intention there is to try and fix that. You can fix these things. The U.S. is capable of building drones. It's just we aren't capable of competing with the labor laws, emissions laws, energy prices from coal plants, etc., that you see in China. So I'm hoping that this ban on DJI drones results in a strong U.S. drone market popping up to take its place over the next 1, 2, 3 years. Anduril actually is a drone that we were showing off in Japan recently that's made with 100% Japanese parts. Japan is another nation that can build their own drones. They don't need DJI, but it's hard for that to make economic sense when China is allowed to flood the market.
Let's pivot and talk about mod retro.
Sure.
For the lay person, no, I'm going to do it. That's why you're here, right? Your background's in virtual reality, and you've basically rebirthed the Game Boy. I don't know if there's some IP issue on that.
So Mod Retro is actually a company I started when I was about 14 years old, combining retro technology and modern technology to build these kind of tributes that bring the best of both worlds. So like we make, for example, something called the Mod Retro Chromatic. Think of it as like the ultimate tribute to the Nintendo Game Boy. It's a Game Boy cartridge compatible console that has an aluminum magnesium shell. Instead of a plastic window over the screen, it has a lab-grown sapphire crystal window. It's the largest sapphire crystal window of any product ever, way bigger than you would typically see on like a Rolex or something, because I've got to cover an entire screen. We're also building a new console called the Mod Retro M64, which plays Nintendo 64 games. Think of it again as like the ultimate Nintendo 64. What would it look like if the Nintendo 64 were built with money is no object, the ultimate thing? And we've got some other new stuff coming down the pipe as well. But I've been coming to CES for 17 years now. First year I came was 2010. I think I was 16 or 17 years old at the time. I had to use a fake ID to get into the show because you had to be an adult and you had to be industry. So I just had a fake business card and a fake ID, and I pretended to be from a different company. Now I'm coming with a real ID and with a real company, and I'm seeing all my friends from the VR days, all my friends from the retro days, and of course, a lot of defense presence here too.
How big can Mod Retro be?
Mod Retro is never going to be as big as Apple. It's never going to be as...
How big is it currently?
Currently, look, you've got a couple dozen people building things for people who really, really care about this stuff. I think that there's some things we have coming down the line that are going to be more broadly interesting. For example, we're working on something. I won't get into the details because I'm not supposed to talk about it. It's a TV that works. So... if you've ever bought a smart TV and had problems, imagine a TV that instead it just did what it was supposed to.
You'll never guess who was complaining about his TV today.
I was.
There's a lot of things that we're working on that are kind of learning from the lessons of the past and trying to just bring them into the future. Like, what would you rather have? A smart TV or a TV that shows what you plug into it? I think I know what most people would want, but that's a pretty retro idea, unfortunately, now.
I just want a television that works. Palmer Luckey, founder of Anduril, founder of Mod Retro, also CTO at Anduril, I would say, frankly, could not have had a more timely conversation given the headlines of the day.